All right, PreCal, it's Miss Kosh back again for geometric sequences. I expect this video to go a little faster because I just made the arithmetic one and I talk a little bit about what is a sequence in general. So if you didn't watch that first one, you should, because I'm going to assume that you have. So here's what I notice on this one. When I start to go from one term to the next, what I see is I'm looking at this and I say, well, there's 3 times 2 is 6, 6 times 2 is 12, 12 times 2 is 4. Sure enough, here the next one would be 48, then 96. And so what we have with this one, we're multiplying by the same thing each time. So a geometric sequence is a sequence with a common ratio, and typically we use the letter R to be that common ratio, where we're multiplying by the same thing each time. And you can prove it by showing that g sub n plus 1 divided by g sub n is equal to that common ratio. That if I take a term and divide it by the term right before it, or then I'm always going to have that same ratio. So let's look back up here. So notice with this, I have 3, I have 6, I have 12, I have 24, I have 48. This is 3 times 1. This is 3 times 2. This is 3 times 2 times 2. This is 3 times, oh goodness, 1, okay. So notice that's a little tedious if we write this out this way, but we were multiplying by 2 each time. So notice that this could actually be written as 3 times 2 to the 0. This is 3 times 2 to the 1. This is 3 times 2 squared. This is 3 times, that's a 2, cubed. I was ready to write that cubed, I think, sorry. 3 times 2 to the 4th power here. Notice, and then, okay, one thing we didn't say yet, and I should have, is that this is term 1, term 2, term 3, term 4, term 5. Look at, do you see a relationship here between this 5 and this 4, and this 4 and this 3, and this 3 and this 2, and this 2, and okay, I'm sorry, I'm tired of that. Notice that the exponent is 1 less than the term number. So what we're going to find here is that this is, it's 3 times 2 to the n minus 1 to find that nth term. And they said find the 10th term. Okay, 2 raised to the 9th. I have a calculator right next to me, is 512 times 3 is equal to 1536. Okay, so I'll do more in practice in a minute, but now notice, here's this we said was our recursive formula. So remember with recursive, you always tell me where to start and what to do. So this one, we're starting with 6, and what are we doing? We're multiplying it by 2 each time. That's almost the same sequence. Okay, and they wanted 4 terms. Fantastic. The next one, we're just going to plug in 1, we're going to plug in 2, we're going to plug in 3, we're going to plug in 4. Plug in 1, plug in 1 right here. Notice this goes to 0. Anything to the 0 power, that becomes 1. So 7 times 1 is 7. Then if I plug in 2, 2 minus 1 is 1, this 3, anyway, and then multiply that by 3, we're at 63. Multiply that by 3, I don't really feel like it, is this, 189, and we keep going. Okay, so I'll do the rest later. But now what we do want to talk about too is that the recursive form in general, once again, you got to tell me where to, you know what, well, I don't always do this, but I like to use G so that you know it's geometric, but it doesn't have to be. It's just kind of a whatever. So the first term, G sub 1 is equal to G sub 1, whatever that value is. Back here, that I said A sub 1. Okay, there's no reason that it has to be G, it could be A. And then you'll tell me, okay, G sub n is equal to the common ratio multiplied by the term that came right before it. Right, so notice, if we want the nth term, we're using the n minus 1th term and then multiplying it by 2, which happens to be that common ratio. So the general form would be this down here. So the explicit formula is say I want to get to I have A sub 1, A sub 2, A sub 3, A sub 4, and somewhere out here is A sub n. If I'm at the first term and I want to get to the 4th term, I need to multiply by the common ratio 1, 2, 3 times. So I could say A sub 4 is equal to A sub 1 times R cubed. Well, so if I want to get to the 100th term, that's going to be the first term times the common ratio raised to the 99th power. So if we're in general, it's going to be a sub n is equal to a sub 1 times r to the n minus 1. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Let me come back and work a little bit more. Go away. Oh, I like this problem. Okay, so here's what happens with this guy. We know if I'm at, okay, so I don't know the first term, I know the second term, I don't know the third term, I know the fourth term. So I'm going to have to multiply and multiply. So g sub 4 is equal to g sub 2 times r squared. I got a little too fat. The writing, my bad. So g sub 4, 324, is equal to 144 times r squared. 324 divided by 144, you can't see my calculator, but it's 2.25. A lot of these are really helpful if you use fractions. So that's 9/4 is equal to r squared. Now, here's that cheer from before, square root, plus minus. Okay, so I see that this is equal to plus or minus 3/2 for r. Okay, so we don't know necessarily if it's positive or it's negative. So we have to consider both scenarios. So there's actually two equations. There's two different nth terms. But before we can continue, g sub 2 would equal to g sub 1 times r. So g sub 2 is 144. We don't know g sub 1. That's what we need to figure out. We could have this a positive. And when r is positive, g sub 1 will be positive. When r is negative, g sub 1 will be negative, but it's going to be the same number. So I have 144 that needs to get divided by 1.5, and so that's 96. So our g sub 1 is equal to 96, which will be positive or negative in these two scenarios. So g sub n is equal to a positive 96 when r is positive. I bet you've missed the sound of the bell. There you go, those of you that are working from home. Raise to the n minus 1. Or it could also be g sub n is equal to, that's not an equal sign, is equal to that negative 96 times a negative 3/2 to the n minus 1. Okay, if you didn't show me both when I could see both, then I would not give you full credit, because that particular one, the nth term could be either one of those things. So you definitely want to include both of them. I will continue and do the other one on the answer key. Let me look at the next one. Oh, I did not intend to do, I switched my letters around, sorry. Let's just change this to, I didn't mean to. That's a G. These make this an A. Okay, whatever. So, my bad. I'm good, but I'm not perfect, and I don't even care this year. Well, I don't care most years. Sorry. Okay, g sub n is equal to g sub 1 times r to the n minus 1. So I can plug in what I know. I do know r. What's my n minus 1? So I need to divide by 3. 768 divided by 3 is 256. Oh, 256 is a power that I know. I know that that's a power of 2, and I always count on my fingers. So it goes 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256. So this is 2 to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is 2 to the 8th is equal to negative 2. Well, actually, this would be negative 2 to the 8th also, because that would, a negative to raise to the 8th power is going to be positive to the n minus 1. And so now that means 8 is equal to n minus 1, add 1, and n is equal to 9 for that particular problem. Okay, I will finish your answer key for you. Go check it. Well, what I'd recommend, maybe try it and then go see if you match my answer key. And good luck to you. Go practice.